Hi everyone, welcome. And so we'll begin our debate session for the MUISS Treasurer candidates. We have Sashi here and also Evelyn, the office bearer of MUISS Treasurer as well. So glad to have you here. So before we move on, I would like to explain the itinerary for this debate session. So we will have an intro, which is now, and we'll be moving to the opening statement of the candidates, followed by the Q&A from the office bearers. So during the Q&A from the office bearers, so the audience, you may also drop in any questions you have for the candidates, and it will be asked uh, during the Q&A session later. And to end the session, we'll end it with the closing statement from the candidates as well. All right. So without further ado, Sashif, you may move on to your opening statement and you have 5 minutes.
Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Achieve, and I'm a year two Saman chemical engineering student, and I'm from Indonesia. So I'm here today because I want to be your MUISS treasurer for next year. So one of the reasons that I believe that I'm qualified to be MUISS treasurer is that from the start of 2021, I was part of the treasurer subcommittee for 6 months. After that, I've recently been appointed as the new MUISS CRO. So I believe that my unique experience, both being a subcommittee in the Treasury Department as well as an office bearer in another department, will provide me with valuable insight as to how I can run the MUISS Treasury Department for next year. I believe that being a subcommittee, I learned so much from Evelyn and how the department is run, as well as being an office bearer in another department. I feel like I could take the good from both these departments and combine it to make a very efficient and successful MUISS Treasury Department for next year. So one of the main reasons that I want to run and become a part of MUIS is the fact that MUIS really provides international students with a home. I, like many of you, I started my studies in university online. I was part of the October 2020 intake. And because of that, I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't have any friends. And Moose really provided me with a home, with their orientation game. Among Monastians, I joined that. And from that, I came away with so many friends. And Moose provided me with a place to do that. So I want to do the same for other international students who next semester, there's a high possibility that so many international students, not only freshmen, are going to be coming on campus for the first time. And I want to give back to the international students community and provide them a place where they can speak, a place where they have friends like MUIS did for me before. So I really want them to experience the same thing that I did. So even though I'll be working from behind the scenes in the Treasury Department, I believe that me being a MUIS treasurer will allow for MUIS to grow, and this would be better for the international students. So one of the things I want to talk about today is my manifesto and what I want to achieve throughout my term as MUIS treasurer. So one of the things that I greatly emphasized on in my manifesto is the enhancement of communication. I believe that in order to make any department run better and more efficient, communication is always key. So I want to enhance the communications between departments within MUIS as well as with the MUSA treasurers in order to increase the efficiency and functionality of not only MUIS but MUSA as a whole. I believe that one of the ways that we can do this is more frequent meetings with the budget committee so that if any problems arise, we could handle that more swiftly due to the higher frequency of meetings. In addition to this, I also believe that I was made aware that in the budget committee meetings, there are no meeting minutes that are taken. So I believe that in order to make these meetings more efficient, we need to have a written record so that everybody knows what they're supposed to do. And if anyone doesn't do what they were told that they were going to do, they can be held accountable because we have a written record of what everyone said throughout the meeting. Another thing that I plan to do is I plan to increase transparency of MUIS finances. So I already know that there's already an initiative that where an annual budget report is going to be published at the end of the year based on the 2 semesters. However, what I want to do is at the end of every semester, I want to curate statistics and infographics to be posted on Instagram so that it will be more accessible and easier to understand for students. Because frankly, if I wasn't going to be part of the MUISS Treasury Department, I wouldn't read the budget report as well. So I don't expect other students to read it. And by posting on Instagram, I feel like it would be more accessible for students and they would see these easy statistics without any jargon and something simple so that they can all understand how much money is being spent for their own good And I believe that if they see how the money is being spent, they would be more willing to engage in events because they know that we're spending the money for their good. Another thing that I want to do is for next year, due to the high possibility that we're going to be on campus, I want to improve the allocation of budgets across most departments so that we can more efficiently use the budget for the events on campus. Because so one of the things I'm planning to do is there are so many departments in MUISS. However, I don't believe that each department needs the same amount of money because each department spends it on different events. So an example could be for MCN and the CRO department. So the CRO department might need more money than certain other departments because MCN is one of the biggest events that MUISS holds in the year. So I have to take that into account, and based on that, I will allocate the budget to each department separately. So this is the main things that I want to achieve throughout the year. And in addition to this, I'm always striving for continuous improvement. And I believe that if you vote for me as your treasurer for MUISS next year, I can do a great job and I can greatly improve the efficiency and functionality of MUISS and MUSA as a whole. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sashir, for the opening statement. Now we're gonna move on to the Q&A session with the office bearers. We have Evelyn here. And just to remind you, the candidates is allowed for 1 minute thinking time if you need. Okay, and yeah, for the audience, you may drop down any questions that you have for the candidate. Okay, the floor is yours, Evelyn.
All right. Thank you, Stella. Thank you for your great speech, Sachif, and thank you for being here. And I'll move into my question. So to start this series of question, if you do get elected as a MUIS treasurer, I would like to ask you, what does being a MUIS treasurer meant for you?
So essentially, people think that being a treasurer just means you handle the finances and you handle money. But I don't think that's the only thing that a MUIS treasurer does. I believe it's so much more than that. The responsibility that the treasurer holds in MUIS is to analyze, edit, and question budget proposals to make sure that everything is in order before we submit it to the MUSA treasurers. We are also, as a MUISS treasurer, I'm also responsible for all the documentation of receipts, invoices, and financial reports. And I'm also responsible for the budget allocation across all the MUISS departments. So, contrary to the belief of the majority, I don't just handle money, I have to handle documents. And especially if we are going to be on campus next semester, there's going to be a lot of handling of physical receipts. And I believe that it would be I would have to be I have to take responsibility for a lot more things and a lot more documentation. So money is not the only role. However, it's also documentation and making sure that the budgets are being followed, allocating the budgets properly for different events based on their size and based on how much each department needs based on the size of events in each department. So I believe that the MUISS treasurer role entails heavy planning to make sure that we have budget available and approve these budgets for events and keep all the documentation of what was spent. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So based on your answer, I believe that you already have an idea of what kind of responsibility MUIS treasurer holds. And I believe that since you have spent your semester as a treasurer subcommittee, uh, I would like to ask you, based on your experience, what do you think could be improved in the treasurer department if you are running as a MUIS treasurer next year?
Thank you for your question. So obviously this year, one of the main problems that MUIS has had as a whole, not only treasury departments, is the slow approval of funds, and that has caused us to get funds way after the date of the event. And I believe that next year, if we are on campus, I don't believe that that should happen because being if events are on campus, we would need a lot more money for the venue, for catering, etc., etc. So we would need the money to come to us on time. And one of the things that I want to do is, as I said before in my opening speech, I would want to make more frequent meetings with the budget committee as well as meeting minutes to have a record of what was said throughout the meeting. And as well as the more frequent meetings would allow us to discuss how we can get budgets faster from finance. And I believe that discussing as a whole with all the treasurers would allow for us to do that so that we don't get delayed finances, especially if it's going to be on campus events, so that we can make the events run smoothly as well as make MUISS run more efficiently, because we would get funds quickly.
All right. Okay, then moving into my moving into my next question. It's actually related to your manifesto since you're mentioning about enhancing the communication between MUIS and MUSA department, right? So, if it's possible, could you maybe elaborate more on other concrete steps that you will take to achieve this manifesto other than budget committee meeting, if you have one?
Yes. So, thank you for your question. So, essentially, improving communication, as I said before, is always the key to improve anything, because miscommunication can be a big reason why things don't run as smoothly or run as efficiently as we want them to run. Excuse me. So, I believe that in addition to the increased budget committee meetings, I believe that more formal forms of communication might be needed. We need to be able to separate our personal lives and professional lives and realize that this is not simply a friendly matter. However, we might need to be more formal in our communication, and we need to hold people accountable if they do not do their jobs. So I believe that in order to improve the communication, we need to be more formal. We need to start keeping more records of what everybody is saying, so that people can be held accountable if they do not provide what they promised to do. So I believe that one of the most important things we can do is be more formal, as well as have more written record of everything that we say.
Okay, it's definitely an interesting answer and it's very doable. Moving on to your second manifesto, you're planning to post infographics on your official platform, yeah? Uh,
Yes.
Firstly, I would like to ask, do you have any other official platform that you are planning to use other than Instagram?
So, thank you for your question. So, it is my understanding that we have a website as well for MUSA. So, I believe that we should post this on the MUSA website as well for the easier infographics, because I believe that next year we should utilize the website better, because I don't believe that Instagram should be the main way of communicating to the students of our finances and everything. Yes, I believe that we should use Instagram to communicate and promote events, but I don't believe that should be the main way. So, I believe that next year we should utilize the MUSA website better, and I believe that we should also post infographics on the MUSA website, because I believe that the MUSA website should have everything that a student needs in order to get to know about MUSA, get to know about any events, as well as any financials that we spend. So I believe that using the MUSA website will be key in improving MUSA engagement as well as transparency with the students. So I believe that that's an important thing that we need to take into account for next year.
All right, noted. I have a follow-up question on this matter. If hypothetically saying there has been a complaint arises under the infographic post, what will you do to tackle these specific problems?
So, sorry, can I just clarify? Do you mean complaint because of the money that we spent, or complaint because we're divulging out how much we spend?
Um, the money that we spend.
Okay. So, I believe that first of all, everybody there in anything we do, there's always going to be critics. So, first of all, I will take a look at the validity of this complaint first, because that's the major thing we need to do. Because there's whatever we do, there's always somebody that's going to be mad about how much money we spent or didn't spend for the budget. So I believe that it could be for the first semester, we might spend less because we have more events happening in the second semester. So if this is indeed a valid complaint, we could communicate with the student and make them understand why we did not spend as much in the first semester, perhaps. However, if the complaint is just that, oh, we did not spend money, I don't believe there's anything that we can do, because our aim for this is just to show the students that based on the budget we have, this is what we spent. So I believe if the student is still complaining, I don't believe that's reasonable, and I don't think there's anything that we could do about that. However, the only thing we can do is communicate better and make them understand that we spent the maximum that we can in for their benefit. So I believe that that's the only thing, and that's the major thing that we should do to appease the student.
All right, thank you for your answers. Moving into my my next question. To my knowledge, all this time you have actually learned on how to handle events and treasury matter under an online semester. So my next question will be, how will you deal with different circumstances such as maybe bigger fund allocation or purchases, different type of receipt if next semester is on campus? Especially since your experience as a subcom under this department is limited to online only.
Thank you for your question. So, I know that most of us have not had the experience of online, of offline campus. So, if we are on campus next semester, there might be a learning curve. However, I believe that I'll be able to handle this. This is because even though we are going to be on campus, the treasurer job scope stays the same. However, it's just we will deal with more funds and more documentation. So I believe that I'm still going to be prepared for that because I've experienced what we need to do and what documentation we need to do. It's just there's going to be more of it. So in addition to this, I'm also experienced back in my high school. I used to handle the finances for most of my school's events, so I know how to deal with events with bigger funds. And I believe that from my time under you, I learned a lot of how to keep the documentation, and I feel like even though it's online, it's easy to apply it to an offline campus. It's just that on it's going to be on a bigger scale. So I believe that I will be prepared for this, even though my experience in MUISS has only been online.
All right, thank you. Follow-up questions. How are you, since you have like some experience, right? So how are you planning to do bookkeeping of receipt and bigger purchases such as maybe down payment of venue on big events such as MCN?
Thank you for your question. So I believe that the best thing we can do is keep everything in one standardized location. So what I would do is I would have an Excel sheet that details every single piece of information that we have for each event. It will have the receipts, the money we spent, the costs incurred, the sponsorships, for example, if we had anything. So I believe that an Excel sheet with everything that details all the money we spent and costs that we incurred would be the best way to deal with this, because everything in one place would allow for us to to keep track of anything, and if anything doesn't add up in the end, we can see where we messed up. So I believe that having it in one standardized location, such as an Excel file, would help us to do that.
All right, thank you for your answers. Okay, moving into my next question. I believe that budget allocation is one of the responsibility of MUISS treasurer, right? So in a specific scenario, let's say there has been a readjustment of budget allocation given to each department. What are the concrete steps that you will take to effectively maximize the budget given?
Thank you for your question. So I believe that the main thing I will do is plan out with my whole MUIS department and look at each event that we're doing. If there are reduced budget, for example, I believe that one of the main things that we need to do is prioritize the larger we wouldn't prioritize larger events per se. However, I believe that we would have to take a look at how much we budget each event depending on the size. So I believe that if an event was a smaller event and we allocated a bit more than we needed to, I believe that we could reallocate some funds to the larger events so that these main events do not get affected. And I believe for the smaller events, if we did allocate extra budget, I think it would be okay if we reallocate a little more budget, because giving that extra because they are smaller events, they do not target as many students. And I believe that the event will still be able to go on well if we did reallocate some budget from there. However, I believe that in the event of reduced budgets, we do, other than reallocation of budgets from other events, I believe that something that we need to do is look for more sponsorships, especially if we are going to have on campus events next semester. So I believe that if we do get reduced budgets, reallocation, yes, is a step, but however, I believe that sponsorships will provide us with a bigger amount of money that we can use to make each event better. So I believe that that should be the main thing that we do other than reallocation of budgets if we were to be on campus next semester.
All right, noted. Thank you for the good answer. Moving on to my next question. I believe that you told us that one of the problems that MUIS had is the slow distribution of funds, slow receivement of funds. So I would like to ask, in regard to the speed of fund acquirement, could you maybe explain or share what are the steps that you will take to ensure MUIS will receive its fund on a specific time set?
Thank you for your question. So, I believe that I have two solutions: one short-term solution, one long-term solution. However, I believe the short-term solution should not be the main solution because the short-term solution just involves. I know that for now, for events, we ask them to submit a budget proposal 3 or 4 weeks prior. However, for short-term, we could ask them to submit even like longer prior, for example, 6 to 7 weeks. However, I don't believe that this is the solution to go forward because it asks them for the budget proposal too far in advance. So I believe that the long term solution would be, as I said before, more frequent meetings with the budget committee so that if there are backlog of the funds that we need to get, we can communicate immediately with the MUISS treasurer throughout the budget meetings on a bi-weekly basis, I believe. This would improve the efficiency so that we can discuss and talk it out and be able to get our funds more quickly so that all our events can run smoothly. So I believe that that would be the long-term solution. However, in the short term, if this is not possible yet, we should ask all office bearers to submit the budget proposals further in advance of the event date.
All right, thank you. So for the next question, uh, if there are a conflict that involves two or more departments because of fund distribution, what are the steps that you will take to tackle this matter?
So thank you for your question. So as I've said before, I believe that communication is always key to solve everything. So what I would do is I would talk to the OBs from both departments and call a meeting with all of us from the me as a MUISS treasurer as well as the OBs from these two departments. So then I would talk it out with them and explain to them why they have been allocated the budget that they were allocated, and explain to them that because one event, for example, does not get as much budget as the other event from the other department. I would explain to them the reason for this, and I would talk to them about the cost that they will incur and their expected attendance. Because as we have seen, some events such as MCN, as I said before, are going to be much bigger. So some events would not get as much budget as them because they do not attract as large of an audience. So we would not get as much revenue, as well as it would be on a much smaller, could be on a smaller scale, so that we would not need to allocate as much budget because we don't want to. We want to maximize the efficiency of the budget so that we can have better events throughout the year. So that's why we need to allocate less money to some departments. And so I believe like having a meeting and explaining each fact towards these two OBs would allow for them to resolve their issue and for them to understand why they were allocated, how much they were allocated.
All right, thank you for your answer. Now I'll move on to my last question. How would you ensure each member of MUIS or MUSA that is not related into like the treasury department to understand the financial terms or the fund acquirement procedure that needed to be done?
Thank you for your question. So I believe that yes, a lot of people would not understand the jargon that we use in the treasury department because they would not understand some of the terms we use. So I believe that in order to make everybody understand the process and how the funds work, I would explain to them in very simple terms that anybody can understand. Everybody can understand the revenue, we can understand the cost. So I believe that I would explain them in just these simple terms, and I would explain to them how much money we have and how much money we can spend, so that I believe that explaining it to them in simple terms would allow for them to understand, and they would understand why we are spending this much money.
All right, then I would say that that would be all from me. Thank you for your answers on the questions given.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Everett, for the questions. So now we'll move on to the Q&A session from the students. So from the audience, if you have any questions, do drop it down in the live chat. So yeah, okay, so we have a question from Ali. Given the limited budget allocation, how do you plan to prioritize the events and advise the team? So, can you provide us with some examples?
So, thank you so much, Ali, for your question. So, basically, what I'll be taking into account for these limited budget allocation is that I'll be taking into account mostly factors like the scale of events and the expected attendance. So, what I would do is I would communicate with each of the department and ask them how many people do you expect this event to be for, and how much do they expect to need. So, based on the scale of the event and how large it is and how many students we expect to attend, I believe that it would be easy to allocate the budget, as well as communicating with them. I could communicate prior I could priorly communicate with each OB and ask them about this, and I believe that based on the scale of the event, it would make sense as to this is the way that I would allocate it, and I don't believe that I would receive any OBs getting mad at that because it's just purely based on facts and how much budget we do have.
Right. Thank you, Sasha, for that answer. So, so far, we don't have any questions from the audience, but if the audience you can't think of any questions right now, you can visit the official MUSA Insta page. Drop your questions below at the KYC series so the candidates can answer you there. But in the meantime, it seems like our OB have another question for the candidate.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you, Stel. Yeah. Okay, so one of my question is actually related to bigger event, bigger budget. So let's say, right, on this specific event, you do not have enough budget, even though like you already look for a sponsorship, etc. But like it's still not enough. Do you have any specific like specific steps that you will try to do, maybe cutting off budget, etc.?
So, thank you for your question. So, I believe that in the event that this does happen, and for example, a specific event goes over budget, and even though we search for sponsors and we don't have enough sponsors to cover this budget, I believe that what we would have to do is that we would have to reallocate some funds from other events, because if this event is taking too much funds, we can't just overdraw for this specific event. So I believe that we would have to reallocate some budget for some smaller events that we maybe allocated too much budget towards, so that we could shuffle some of the budget towards this event so that we have enough to pay for it. Other than that, if this is not possible, and this would be the last resort, I believe. However, other than that, first, what I would want to do is I would see if we can cut anything that's unnecessary from this event, and we could cut any unnecessary expenses so that we could reduce the budget for this event specifically. However, if that is not possible, then we would have to move forward with the reallocation of some budgets from other events in order to cover for the budget of this specific event.
All right, thank you for your answers.
Okay. Right. So we have another question from the audience. Okay. So it's from Ali as well. So how will you create a balance between generating revenues and also making the event affordable and convenient for the students?
Um, Thank you so much, Ali, for your question. So I believe that this would depend on every event, and obviously, we want the students to know that our goal is not to generate revenue and earn money from them. Our goal is to simply make good events for them, and the reason that we would charge them is so that we would charge them not as much, and we want to subsidize it a little bit. However, we still do need to make back some money so that we can use this money for the upcoming events and make it bigger for students. So I believe that some bigger events such as MCN, as I have kept reiterating, we do need to charge a lot because we have a lot of costs such as the venue, the catering, etc., etc. So then I believe that for these events we do need to charge students. However, we wouldn't charge students so much that we aim to make a profit. We do aim to subsidize students. However, we still do need to make some money back so that we can create better events for students in the future.
Right. Thank you, Sahi, for the answer. And we have another question from Tanisha. So, how would you deal with the internal conflicts regarding the budget allocations for events?
Thank you so much for your question. So I believe that, as I've said before, my main goal in solving things would be through communication, because communication is always the solution. And I believe that a lot of internal conflicts happen due to a lack of or breakdown in communication. So what I would do is, if there is an internal conflict, I would call a meeting with the people who are in a conflict and with me, and I would explain to them the reason that each budget is allocated based on the size of the events, how the budget is allocated based on how many students we're expected to get to have engaged in these events. So I believe that this would not be a problem if we have prior communication as well as me explaining to them just the simple facts of this is how much you're going to get because this is the scale of the event and this is how many students you are expecting. So I believe that that would be the way to solve this issue. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Sashif, as well. I think that's all from uh the audience. But yeah, it seems like Evan have another question. So yeah, Evan, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Stella. So, Sachif, I think you might know this because you're my subcommittee. So, as we know that each year in like the overall budget allocation given by finance department have a tendency to be further cut. Do you maybe have a way or any concrete step that you want to take to fight for the budget given?
Yes, thank you so much for your question. So, what I would do is because basically these last 2 years have been online, so I don't believe that I could compare anything from the last 2 years if we are on campus next semester. So, I'm going to answer this question based on the fact that I'm assuming that we would be on campus next semester. So I believe that if we were to be on campus next semester, we would need more budget than we have gotten in these past 2 years. And what I would do is I would compare it with the budget reports from 2019 and 2018, for example, in order to prove to them that we do need these extra budgets. And in addition to this, I believe that I will fight for even more budget than we got in 2018 and 2019. This is because a lot of students haven't been on campus, so I believe that we need to make the events as the best that we can for students that haven't seen the campus, because it's not only freshmen that haven't seen the campus, it's second years, it's a third years even because of this pandemic. So I believe that it is our job to provide the best that we can for the students. And in the event that there are budget cuts, I believe that I will fight my hardest and compare it to the facts from 2019, 2018, and tell them that we need this much because we want to make the students feel welcome on campus. We want the students to feel happy that they are back on campus. So we have to maximize the funds that we use so that we can make the events the best that we can. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Sachif.
Okay. Evelyn, do you have any questions more?
I believe that Sachif has already answered all my curiosity, so I think that would be all from me.
Okay, cool. All right. Um, yeah, so I think there are no questions anymore from the audience. So, students, if you do have any questions, you may visit the MUSA official Insta page and comment your question under the KYC series. So, yeah, Sachin will be more than happy to answer those questions. So, okay, we have one question coming in. Right, from Rush One, can you elaborate a bit more about how you plan to go through the infographic process that you mentioned?
So thank you so much, Rashwan, for your question. So what I believe I would do is that I do believe that a lot of students will not understand if we use specific financial terms like we would in the budget report. So I believe that for the infographics, I would like to make it more simple. I would like to post about our revenue, how much we spent, and the budget that we have, so that the students can see and we are fully transparent about everything that we are doing, as well as if they can see the revenue we obtain and the cost that we incurred. I believe that we could show them that we are not overcharging them and we do not plan to gain a profit from them, so that students will be more motivated to join our events in the future. So that's one of the reasons that I plan to post the infographics and just put simple language such as revenue, cost incurred, and budget available. And I believe that that would go a long way for students to trust us and make them feel like they should join our events because we are trying to make it the best for the students, not for ourselves. Thank you.
Okay. Um, right. Uh, I think. we can move on to the closing statement. So, yeah, just one more reminder, if you have any questions, just feel free to visit the MUSA official Insta page, or you can contact. Also, I'm so sorry. Right. There's another question from Rashwan as well. How do you plan to ensure the communication between MUSA and MUISS is improved when it comes to the Treasury Department?
So, thank you for your question, Rashwan. So essentially, what I plan to do is I've stated this before that I plan to improve communication by having more frequent budget meetings. This is because I believe that more frequent budget meetings would allow for not only the MUISS and MUSA treasurers but other treasurers to be able to see how the funds are being met, and if we do have any problems, we could discuss it with all the treasurers present. So I believe that this is very important. As well as I stated before, I believe that having a written record and meeting minutes would be important in improving this communication, because a written record goes a long way in holding people accountable and making sure people keep their promises and do not fail to provide what they said they would. Thank you.
Right. Okay. Do we still have questions from the audience? Right. Okay. Yeah, I think that's all for the questions from the audience. Then, yeah, we can move on to the closing statement for Sashif. Yeah, Sashif, the floor is yours, and you have 2.5 minutes.
So I just wanted to thank everyone for being here today. I want to thank the Election Commission for facilitating this debate. Thank you so much, Evelyn, for asking me those questions. And thank you to the audience who stayed. I hope you stayed throughout the whole debate. So, as I said before, one of the reasons that I want to be your MUISS treasurer is I do believe that I could improve the MUISS Treasury Department, MUISS and MUSA as a whole, and make it more efficient and to allow it to reach its full potential. I do believe that it is important to be a part of MUIS, and I want to give back to the international students and help them and provide them with a place where they feel welcome if they are homesick and if they feel like they don't belong anywhere. I believe that MUIS provides a place for that, and I'm so excited that I have the opportunity to be part of it if you guys do vote for me. So thank you everyone for being here today, and please vote for me so that I could um, make the Treasury Department run more efficiently and live it to the best of potential. So thank you so much, everyone, and please vote for me.
Right. Thank you, Sashif, for the short and concise closing statement. I wish you good luck. And yeah, that concludes our debate session uh, for the MUIS treasurer. So the next debate session will be at 5:30 p.m. for MUIS welfare. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that debate session as well. And thanks for watching. Thank you.
Thank you.